Den of Thieves, the suspense thriller heist movie starring Gerard Butler, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, Pablo Schreiber, O'Shea Jackson Jr., Evan Jones, Max Holloway, and many others, co-written and directed by Mr. Christian Gutegas, who's really more well known as being a director of rap music videos. And I found an interesting rap connection in this movie because not only do you have 50 Cent, you've got Ice Cube's son in the film, and you've got Cheddar Bob from 8 Mile. So seeing all three of them together brought back warm memories of, being a kid or being a teenager, really, and being a big fan of hip-hop. But this movie is not about hip-hop. This is a cops and robbers heist movie. And let me tell you something right now. Christian Gutegas needs to probably stick to doing rap videos because this is what a mess this movie is. This movie is poorly written, poorly directed, and in some ways poorly acted. So Gerard Butler plays a cop, and his name is Big Nick, and he works for the Los Angeles Police Department, and he's been trying to catch a band of bank robbers led by a gentleman named Ray Merriman, who is played by Pablo Schreiber. And these bank robbers have been at large for quite some time and have a history of pulling off these huge heists and big jobs that can't really be pulled off by amateurs. These are professional, big-time bank robberies, but the biggest of all would be the plot of this film, which is their goal to rob the Federal Reserve Bank in Los Angeles. Now, it's clear within the very first few minutes of this movie, the way it's shot, the way it's sound directed, that Christian Gutegas is a huge fan of Michael Madsen movies, specifically Heat, one of the greatest heist movies ever made. And if you haven't seen Heat, then you've probably seen The Dark Knight, and that opening sequence in The Dark Knight where the Joker robs the bank was also taken right from the film Heat. Right from the first firefight of the movie, the film feels like a direct, low-budget knockoff of Heat. And if it's not the loud sound of gunfire at the beginning of the film and the lack of a score that gives you flashbacks of Heat, maybe it's going to be the poor attempt at doing a duality storyline between the criminals and the good guys, showing that the good guys can do bad things and the bad guys can do good things, coming off so much like a made-for-TV version of Heat, which is painfully ironic considering that Heat is actually a remake of a made-for-TV Michael Madsen movie that he remade himself, that he made several years prior to Heat. The difference, of course, being that the Michael Madsen film not only had an incredible script and great cinematography, but it had the acting chops of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And even though Gerard Butler is not a bad actor at all, this movie is not his best performance. In fact, I would say his performance here was pretty damn terrible. He doesn't know if he wants to be Mel Gibson from Lethal Weapon or Eddie Murphy from 48 Hours. And the problem is that in this movie, he doesn't have the charm of either one. He comes off like a prick. He comes off very unlikable. There's a subplot in the movie involving his wife where he's a very, very bad husband, which, by the way, that subplot did not get resolved at all in the film. I'm sitting there waiting to see what happens with that, and we didn't get a resolution with it. So as you're watching the film, you're supposed to try to cheer for this guy and root for this guy, but you just can't because he's a very unlikable person, and not just that, a very boring character as well. There's even a scene in the film, which I thought was pure Oscar bait, where they show him in a car crying because of how hard his life is, and there was really no point at all for that scene to even exist in this movie other than Oscar bait and for Gerard Butler to ham it up. Then you've got the other side of the spectrum, which is Pablo Schreiber, which again, if you're not going to cheer for the good guy, maybe you can cheer for the bad guy. Not in this movie. He does absolutely nothing of value at all in this performance. He is the mob boss, and I'm using air quotes here because, well, you'll see when you see the movie, if you see the movie, which you probably should not see the movie. He is void of charisma throughout this entire film. He does nothing. But that's not the worst part. The worst part about this movie is that this movie, Den of Thieves, is boring. I like heist films. I love heist films, in fact. I love cop dramas, and I love cops and burglar storylines where they play cat and mouse. This movie, once you get past the initial first act, the second act drags and drags and drags and drags and drags. If this movie was 90 minutes and you cut out all the middle schlock, the film would probably be somewhat watchable maybe on CBS Sunday night when there's no football. But watching it in a movie theater for 2 hours and 20 minutes, I swear there was at least 3 people that were next to me playing with with their cell phones during the second act. It just goes on and on and on and on. None of the performances are riveting. The storyline just goes nowhere and goes in circles until they have to get to the last heist, which is the main event of the movie. And the entire thing just feels like a huge waste of time. There's a scene where they have like a confrontation in this hibachi restaurant, and you think something's going to go down. You're watching the film. You're like, okay, this could end up leading to some great moments here with some characters, you know, the rivals, the cops and the burglars. But no, it goes nowhere. Now, even though the film does have a pretty neat ending, not the best ending, but a kind of a cool attempt at a twist ending, it could not save this movie. I literally had to fight to stay awake during that second act. I mean, it really was that bad. Aesthetically speaking, the movie does deliver because the set pieces do look nice. It's lit very well. It feels like something out of the 90s, especially during the climax, the way it's shot. There are some good things here, don't get me wrong. And the sound engineering was great, but none of that matters if you have a movie that has unlikable characters that you don't care about and pretty much a non-existent plot. I mean, the plot of the movie is there's a big heist coming, the cop wants to nail the burglar, and we don't even get to that until the very end of the movie, the third act. And there are so many loose ends that are left untied that are confusing, not just with the subplot with Gerard Butler's character, but there's a whole sequence in the middle of the film close to the end. It was like around the beginning of the third act with a bank robbery, and that never gets resolved. Like, they just move on to the next thing without giving us closure about what happened there. And if you want to talk about bad acting, brother, wow. Okay, so Jordan Bridges plays this FBI agent. I don't know if this is his first day on the set of a movie. I know he's from Dawson's Creek, but he just came off so fake. Like, everything that he said on screen was not believable, and that's not the only thing that wasn't believable. Dawn Olivieri plays Nick's wife, who ends up having a problem with him because he commits an act that you should not commit as a husband, and she's horrible in this film. As I was watching her, it was like she wanted to be anywhere else but in this movie. So no, guys, don't go see this movie. It sucks. Don't waste your time. There's about 1,000 better heist movies out there than this one. Go see Dead Presidents. Go see Reservoir Dogs. Go see Heat. Those are 3 of the best ever made. Don't see this movie. Don't even Redbox it. And if you want to Netflix it, well, maybe I would have told you to wait for Netflix, except for the fact that you could probably stay awake easier watching Bob Ross painting bushes than you would this movie, which has guns and explosions and cops and things that you would think is good. It's just not worth sitting through 2.5 hours of a snooze fest to get to a couple of guns popping off. Not worth it. Bad movie. Skip it. Have a nice day.